All right, so let's take a look at this. This is a fun chapter today. Like I was saying, if we have time, if we get to the one, they don't really cover doubling time like some books do, but I want to mention it too. But I think it does talk about it in here. But I love one of my favorite applications to some of this population ecology is investing in the stock market. And if you start early enough and use the power of compound interest, then you could be or exponential growth. You could be a millionaire in your lifetime. But the problem is the same problem that all of us have is I want to lose 100 pounds, but I want to lose it tomorrow, right? In one day, right? We want to be a millionaire after working 1 week at McDonald's, right? And it doesn't work that way. Okay, unless you inherit it a bunch of money, right? But we'll talk about that. But how many of y'all save? You may save. I have a daughter that's 27 and her husband is a real saver, but they already got money in 401k. They do that little app where they buy everything on their credit card. And like they say, you go to Walmart and it's $33.18 and it rounds it up to 34. It rounds it up the next dollar and that which gets put in the stock market. And that really adds up over a year. And I'm a cash guy. I know that's kind of crazy, but I still like to do cash. But this last year, I probably used less cash this last year than my whole life because of the COVID and all. I'm just using plastic. But it is a cool little app you can buy where it just takes all your credit card purchases and pulls them up, rounds them up to the nearest dollar. And that difference is saved and put into a mutual fund of your choice. Pretty cool little way to save, I think. Anyway, but we'll talk about that. But I think that's an application of this chapter when we're looking about population growth and some things we got to be concerned about in nature. Okay. But what really cool chapter here on ecology, on population ecology. And we just got some terms to start off with. Then we're going to look at some of these models and some of these theories of this. And I actually had a bunch of questions here, and I apologize. This is really a cool area to be. And when I was y'all age, this was kind of not cool. It's cool. And I know this sounds really brutal, but I'm just going to be honest with you. If you were wanting to make your biology back in the 70s or 80s, and you were like me, I'm not the sharpest knife in the box, right? I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I'm not the dumbest either. But if you're one of those kind of slow, making that D, and introduction biology, they'd say, hey man, you can go into ecology, right? Because you can go out here and label birds and chase animals and it's, that's kind of what people thought ecology was. Go out here and just count some mushrooms and stuff like that, and just kind of do surveys and stuff like that. But what is really, I think, made this such a cool area was the introduction of computers and modeling. So things like global warming, right, and ozone, holding ozone, things that we now know are happening, come from this field to use computers to predict what might happen. And of course, there's a lot of social applications of this. But y'all might be shocked that every major city probably has a person who's had a degree in population dynamics from biology to help map cities and make sure that all the things that are needed, water systems and all that, use a lot of biological applications of ecology and put all the players in. And we'll see this, some modeling of an ecosystem, which we'll talk about in a minute. So that's very common in city planning. Okay, pretty cool. All right, so ecology is the study of interactions of organisms with their physical environment. So this would be everybody in a given area, all the living organisms in a given area, plus the non-living part. And that ecosystem could be my large intestine gut, the bacterium in my large intestine, right? The bacterium in this, they asked that she's leaning her elbows on right there, right? There's a whole ecosystem right there. Or the super ecosystem is the biosphere, the entire part of Earth where life can exist. So the very bottom of the ocean, where those thermal vents where life is occurring, to microscopic organisms floating at the edge of space. Okay, so the biosphere is the entire part of Earth. And by the way, in case y'all didn't know, Thursday is Earth Day, right? So we got a little special day, right? Worldwide media celebration of Earth, right? And kind of take a minute and pause and think that this thing is, we shouldn't take it for granted. That I think we have done. As humans, we have taken this blue marble for granted, and we need to back off a little bit and appreciate what God has given us, I would think. Okay, the habitat is where you live in the organism, and maybe a little bit of your job place where an organism lives. So what is your habitat? Okay, y'all's habitat has been, so we canvas, right? Y'all been here most days, right? Population is all the individuals of one species in a given area. So the population of bacterium, a certain bacterium in my colon, okay, or the rats in math and science building would be a population. And then the fleas would be a different population. The community is all the populations together, all the different species in a given area. And that location could expand up or dial up or dial down. For example, the coral reef, which I've been to several times from coral reefs diving, are super cool ecosystems around with all these different species. And then back to our first term there, ecology is the interaction of organisms among all organisms and the physical environment. An ecosystem is the community, that's all the different populations in a given area and how they interact with the non-living 2. And that ecosystem would be, we model, it can be as small as a cell ecosystem all the way up to the biosphere, right? So it's just whatever you want to make it. Okay. And we'll look at some more of those. And one of the things that's really cool is we can look at energy and nutrients flowing through an ecosystem. And that's where that whole model of how cities work can be used. Okay. All right. So here's a cool picture of it. So here is Bubba fish. He's an organism. He is a species of the Bubba fish group. And the population of all the Bubba species is the population. And then all the different species, populations of fish and coral living in this given area would be the community. And then the ecosystem would be them and the water and the dead rocks and stuff, everything all together is the ecosystem. Okay, pretty cool. All right. So demography, the study is a statistical study of a population, and it can be, so this is looking at a population, and a couple things we can look at with that last one, I think being more interesting, but population density, and that's how many people live per square inch, per square foot, or per square mile, and distribution is how we distribute. Humans like to clump, right? Humans clump. We live in clusters of people, right? And we'll see that in a second. And then the growth rate. Okay, so density is the number of individuals per unit area, and that could be however you want to model it up or down. Distribution patterns would be the pattern of dispersal of individuals, and we'll see a picture of that. And usually there's a limiting factor in an environmental ecosystem that controls how many organisms can live in that area. Is anybody in here? When I was young, I was a big aquarium person. Don't judge me, okay? No judgment here, right? But at one time I had 10-gallon aquariums, a 110-gallon aquarium, and an 80-gallon aquarium. Really into fish, okay? Really into fish and you know, breeding them and just keeping them and all that kind of stuff. And so one time I paid like $150 for fish. It's like a fish store, and it died after 3 days. And I'm like, I just felt like I wasted some money there, right? So then I did something really cool. I had some friends who work for Game and Fish. So I took my 110-gallon aquarium and turned it into a natural ecosystem of Mississippi fish. And my friends that work for the Game and Fish, they have this big boat that shocks fish, and they'll go out and check the fish and sardines on a cove, and it shocks them, not to kill them, but stuns them, and they come up, and then they get nets, and they measure them and weigh them. Sometimes they mark them, later they'll mark them, or track them, and then they'll put them back in. And I will tell you, I've been with them some days from there, but it's in the day, and they turn the little burner up a little high, it kills them, so you don't have to take them home and eat them, right? I'm just saying, you know. So we did do a little bit of that, for the breaking some laws there. But I went with them one day, and I collected just about every species of fish in North Mississippi. I had a gar, like a gar, you know what a gar is? It's got the long nose. That I had a gar I kept alive for like 10 years in the aquarium. And I'd have to feed it minnows sometimes. And I just by side, I don't know how evolution worked for them. Maybe I just had a real dumb one. They have to line up, you know, they strike that fish, and then they got to turn it and swallow it. They just got to go down because they're kind of like a long cigar shaped, pencil shaped fish. And then I had bass, which I think of the freshwater sharks, basically. And I would put 10 minnows in that thing, and they would kill every one of them. I seen one bass one time, they killed 5, had his mouth full, had his tail hanging out, and he was still striking the 1 minute still alive. And people used to pay so much to feed them. I mean, it's pretty crazy. That I had some, you know, the brim and everything in there. So you can, so anyway, but the reason I say that, make a long story short, the rule on aquarium is 1 fish per gallon. If you have like a normal, you know, fish that you buy. And so if you got a 100-gallon aquarium, I can have a bunch of fish. I can have 100 fish in it, right? Regular fish, right? But if you got a 10-gallon aquarium, you don't need to put more than 10 in there, or they destroy the ecosystem. Their nitrogen waste and all their poo and all that will kill the ecosystem. So everything has a limit. And when you think about that, and Earth has a limit that it can hold without destroying the ecosystem, right? And we probably haven't exceeded that, but we have exceeded it in certain areas, right? Where we have so many people living in real small areas, okay? So anyway, pretty cool. So limiting factors are something we'll talk about too. 3 different ways of distribution patterns. They can be clumped together, which we see that, like, I think our cities are kind of like that, right? Where a lot of people live together, and there's kind of it's probably along rivers and how it's along some kind of river tributary. A random would just be a total random distribution, and then uniform would be very distinctive, like you planted a field, right? Like when you plant a cornfield, that would be a uniform type pattern. So that's kind of cool on that. The study of desert shrubs, investigators found that distribution changed from clump to random to uniform as plants matured. And it's just like this. So you can see the shrubs there, seeing clump, random, and eventually they're uniformly separated apart there, which is kind of cool. So it kind of led to that over time. Population growth, and we usually refer that as R, is the number of individuals born each year minus the number of individuals who die each year. So rate of growth. Now, what do y'all think the rate of growth is on Earth? I don't think the book actually told us that. Maybe I missed it. But the rate of growth is like pretty low, like, maybe I think it's 0.7, 0.8%. Okay, so we got to play a little game with this. Okay, so think about rate of growth, and I use something y'all can relate to, interest. Okay, on your money in the bank. So when I was a kid, I worked and I saved up like $10, and I put it in the Guntown, South Mississippi Bank. So I put like $10 in the bank. Watch this. I think y'all can relate to this. I put $10 in the bank, and it drew 1% interest. And after a year, I got a statement in the bank in the mail, probably a quarter stout, right? They wasted, right? And so what did I have in the bank after a year? So 1% of that would be what? 0.0001. 4 decimal places. I made 1 penny. I had $10.01 in the bank. Woo! Big money. Big money. And they wasted a quarter mailing it to me, right? That is what your money is doing. And if you have a good checking account, I mean, most checking accounts have 0, but some pay 1%. What if you're Bill Gates and you don't have $10 in the bank? You have 10. Wait, let me do it again. Say you give your child $10 billion. Now, obviously, he has more than that. But $10 billion at 1% would be what? What's this? Just to make you freak out, okay? And we got to move it 2 places. And so he just made, get my math right, $1 billion a year, $10 million a year interest. Okay, we need to teach this to y'all in class, right? Because I mean, I don't want to get off somebody I got my evaluation, somebody got mad because I talked about politics in my class. Well, I'm sorry, this is politics, this is nature, right? Y'all need to know this. I'm not telling you how to think, I want you to think. One of my goals is you to think. We need to think about this, right? I don't think it's a good idea to not tax people's money on stocks or savings, right? Because if we did away with that, then people like rich people's kids would never pay taxes. You follow me? You know what I'm saying? Because that would be a pretty substantial amount of money, right? So if you inherit a lot of money, it's easier to stay wealthy, right? Agree? Because you're drawing interest, right? On your money. Say, I mean, the federal government guarantees the federal bond. You can get a bond for like what? I don't know, 2 or 3% for 10 year, 15, 30 year note. But that seems like not seem like a lot. But if you put $1 billion in the bank and you draw 3 or 4%, that's like $30,000 or $40,000 a year. That's pretty good little blow money, right? And you never touch your principal. Okay. Same thing with population. So when Earth started out with Adam and Eve, it wasn't a big deal when you had 4 people, right? Or 6, right? But when you have 6 billion or 7 billion at 1% growth, then that's like 100 million people to feed every year, right? You follow me? So we'll reach that. This has a cool term. This is called exponential growth. So this is not something I'm making up here, and we'll see it in just a second. We'll see that in just a second. So, and I jumped ahead. So body potential is the maximum number of individuals that you can produce in 1 year. So what is the body potential of rats or rabbits? It is high, right? Because y'all know that we can rabbits reproduce fast, right? Rhinoceroses, that what we got there, yeah, is that right? I think that's that what I'm there. They have 1 or 2 kids a year. And that means that if you have a boy and a girl, then your chances of just increasing 1, your 50% increase, right, every year would be a pretty big, would be your body potential, right? If 2 people can make 1 kid every year, then the reproductive success. But rabbits, and I tell you this, we used to grow rats in the laboratory and do research on them. But guess what? At puberty, guess how old a rat is at puberty? It's 18-day-old rat. So a 3-week-old rat is past its prime. Yeah. So that just tells you how fast they can reproduce, right? And their gestation period is much lower. Okay. So body potential is a big deal. That's just a term to know. Maximum number of individuals can be born in a given area over time. And obviously, there are going to be dependent factors that prevent organisms from reaching body potential. Okay. And it talks about that one there. We saw that. Okay. So mortality patterns, a cohort is all everybody of the same age in a given population. And then we have what we call survivalship curves. Now, I used to, for a little while, my brother had married into a family that had a big successful insurance company. And I actually sold something for a while. I don't know how to license. I ain't selling y'all nothing today. I'm not selling anybody anything. but it was kind of fun. I enjoyed selling life insurance because it was based on these survivorship curves. And this is survivorship curves. And we are type 1 survivorship curve. Most humans don't die as children, right? We usually, death occurs after the midpoint of life. So 50% of our lifespan, which is what is our lifespan now? About 76, something like. Actually, last year it went back down for the first time in years because of COVID. So the average number of children, the average lifespan of a child born last year is actually 76, and it was 77 the year before because so many people died of COVID and other things, right? But that's been a big deal. We have type 1, so our insurance companies work on the fact that we know a lot of young people ain't gonna die, right? But what if we were survivorship 3? Woo! That'd be some expensive life insurance, right? Because so what is the animal where most of the young die? Or something like that, like fish laying eggs, right? Most of the young die. Very few fish make it to adulthood. So that's type 3 survivorship curve. All right, mosquitoes, millions of eggs, only a few make it to bite you, right? Versus, bluegrass has a high survival rate, in humans and animals. Okay, and here's one that's kind of cool. Type 2 curve seems to have no difference of age. I mean, and I feel this way, and I've got the guy over here or whatever, listeners, but I feel this way about snakes. How do y'all feel about snakes? Y'all, I'm gonna have to answer this on Judgment Day, but I just pretty much kill all snakes, I think. You know what I mean? I don't care if it's a little 2-inch baby snake, I'm gonna scream, and I'm gonna kill it. I'm gonna take a hoe or something and kill it, right? Versus, a 6-foot anaconda, I'm gonna take a shotgun and try to kill it, right? I don't know. And I need to quit that because I'm just kind of being judgmental, I think, for snakes, right? Is anybody else scared of snakes? I really have a fear of snakes. One of my best friends, my preacher friend, my preacher's scared of sharks. He has a morbid fear of sharks, right? And they pretty much leave you alone. I have swum with sharks before scuba diving. You just don't want to, cut yourself or have meat, carry bloody meat down there with you. They might accidentally eat you. But anyway, so this is a cool question, right? You need to know these 3 types of survivorship curves, right? And we are type 1. Type 2 is equal death between young and old. And we see things like snakes and lizards and stuff fall into that one. And type 3 would be only the good die young, the bad soft age, right? But young die, and very few make it old. But we see this that most organisms fall into those 2 groups, these 3 groups. Another cool thing that we look at is age distribution, the age that people are in, right? There are 3 major age groups. There is the children before reproductive age, probably before the age of 12, right? Then you have the reproductive age, so for us, from like 13 to maybe 40 or 35, 40, right? Most people don't have kids in their 50s, right? But I have had some friends that have done that, right? And then post-reproductive age would probably be after 50 years old. Very few people have children after 50, right? And some people do. I've had a couple friends of mine that have, but that's pretty unusual. And we can look at that, and we can look at these age structure diagrams to tell us if the population is going to increase in the future. Do we need more people to become teachers? Do we have a big baby boom, right? And we can kind of take a look at the population. Look at some of these. For example, look at the first one here. This would be probably a country that is coming out of working its way to becoming an industrial country. And you have a lot of reproductive kids, a lot of the reproductive age, and it's pretty much, kind of a pyramid shape. Now, I'm gonna take a shot, and y'all just get mad at me if you don't worry about them, but a great example, that is America in 1950 when we started Social Security. I have a granddad, all my grandparents are dead, but my granddad Robison was not born in 1910, so in 1950 he was 40. And I think that's about when Social Security started in the 50s. And he paid about 10 years and retired, right, at 65, and he drew until he lived to be like 85 years old. Social Security was very good for him, right? Today, at that time, it was like 25 workers for everybody drawing. Well, our population now is more like this, right? The baby boomers, this is my population, 1964, and after 64, the population is going down. So we have fewer people in that work zone, right? And so Social Security is now down to like 6 people, something like that. So I really need y'all to get a good job, right? Stay in school, get a good job, so I can draw my Social Security check, right? And I'm actually 56, and I went in a couple months ago and did the stuff online, see if I had enough years, because I've been paying since I was like 14. And I had like $60 turned in when I was 14. But you have to have like 40 years, of payment in that. And a lot of people, make fun of that, but it was there. Mr. Donahue, my best friend, one of my best friends too, is retiring in May. He's going to draw about $2,300 a month off Social Security. That is not chump change. And if I work here till I'm 62, for another 6 years, and I would draw about $2,200 at 62. Okay, so that is not chump change, right? That's pretty serious money, right? So if y'all see me at Walmart greeting, I'm doing it because I miss people, right? I don't have to do that. That was my state retirement. I'm in pretty good shape, but we do have to adjust it, right? So I think we're going to have to move that age out. It may not be that I should retire at 66. That's my full retirement age. I can early 62. Maybe it needs to be moved out to 63 and 67, right? As we see that people live longer. But anyway, and maybe not, maybe I won't get as much if we have to readjust it. But anyway, especially here's a stable population, there's an increasing population, and we're probably decreasing a little bit, our US population somewhat, if you don't count immigration. Okay, I'm just saying, we have Europe, England, there's a lot of countries in Europe are in negative growth. So England, there are less British people than there were 100 years ago. So some of these more mature countries, right, have kind of reached this point where they're not growing population-wise. And we can look at that in biology and use that to find out to plan ahead, right? And that's what I'm talking about, where a lot of the ecology principles can be used in society, right? But you can see that, pretty cool. Okay, here's a cool one here. Two working models for population growth is semi-poverty members of the population have only a single reproductive event in their lifetime. So some organisms reproduce one time, like the insects, and have lots of babies, right, at one time. And that's adapted to an unstable environment. This other one, parity, reproduce every year or have a cycle of every 2 or 3 years. So most vertebrates and shrubs and trees reproduce yearly, or can reproduce yearly. That's pretty cool. So you just got some examples of that. All right, now let's go back to the exponential growth, okay? And so remember, my money in the South Little People's Bank is not growing exponential, right? It was at 1%, and I made a penny that 1 year. So what you want to do is get your money in the bank and get it big enough where it reaches exponential growth. Okay, now watch this. Exponential growth has a very cool curve. Look at this. This is what exponential growth looks like. Now look at this. This is data for a discrete reproduction, and A are applied as the exponential growth curve, and C is the formula produced the same results. So this is mosquitoes. So if you had 10 mosquitoes on generation 1 and 5 females, and by the way, this life cycle is probably just a couple of weeks, right? And then, right? So it's not every year like us, so it takes a year. Then look, second generation, you had 24, 57. Now see, that's just doubling, but it's not real big yet. Look, 138, 331, 791, 1900, 45, 11,000, 26, 63. What you want to do is get your money in exponential growth. Okay? So we're getting that. So another one, this is one that we talk about in investments. Look at this. This is one that I think it's in the book, but they didn't really talk about it. But how long does it take for a population to develop? Right? And you take 70 and divide that by your growth rate. Now, and since 1880, when the New York Stock Exchange occurred, if you had put $1 in every year, it's averaged about 10% return over the last 140 years. Okay, so that is the goal of most investors, is to get a 10% return in mutual funds. So that means your money would double every 7 years. Now, at our growth rate of the Earth is around less than 1, so it's about every 70 years our population is going to double, right? Our growth rate is about, it's a little bit less than 1, I think, for Earth, for humans right now. But that means the Earth is going to double every 70 years. And it started out with Adam and Eve, and it's really now we're reaching that. We'll see in just a minute, there's a graph showing it. We're in exponential growth. So I always tell this, right? And I said, so just have a little fun with y'all today since y'all are awake. Try this, just a little, if y'all don't mind, y'all forgive me, have a little fun today. But try this one. How would y'all like, I'm gonna show you how to be a millionaire real quick. It's a little fun. So when y'all grad, I call this the Robin rule. When y'all get your college degree, what's your first plan? What's the first thing you're gonna do? Go to work, and you're gonna do what with your money? Okay, I love this lady. Okay, pay off debt. Okay, you're gonna buy a car. How many of y'all gonna have to buy a new car, right? I see it every month. One of my former students that I'm friends with on Facebook, they get a new car. They get that new car, right? Or how many of y'all want to move out and not live with your mom and dad? It's okay. They want to move out. Okay, that's only okay. Here's what I want you to do. Live with them 1 year. Live with them 1 year and smooch off them. Eat the free food. They're gonna be missing you because you've been off at senior college, right? And look, I'm just telling you, once a month, take them out to eat somewhere nice, and they will cry. Because that would be what we call a dividend off of y'all, right? So my daughter's like, brings me food and I cry, okay? So Okay, what y'all gonna make? What y'all making? Y'all are making, y'all gonna be doctors, so this is a smart group in here, but what would be a good first year income for, let's say, PTA assistant or something, whatever. Well, let's just say you find a job making, now if you teach it, you ain't gonna make this. Let's just say you get a job making, let's make 60,000. That'd be pretty good first year. That'd be pretty good pay for anybody, I think, at this point in America. But let's just say, you know, if you decide just to get like a master's degree and go work at St. Jude, okay? So how much of that could you save if you didn't buy a new car and didn't have to pay an apartment? You could easily say, well, now you get that taxes is going to get a big chunk of that. So you're going to pay about $20,000 in taxes. So you got $40,000, and let's put $10,000 in a mutual fund, okay, drawing, you know, hopefully 10%. And you are 20, let's say 25 years old, okay? Let's say you went to grad school and got that math. Now watch this. Every 10 years is going to, and look, and then after 1 year, move out, get married, move in with a bunch of friends, whatever, buy a new car. Don't save another penny. Watch this. When you're 32, it's 20,000. I'm just going to put the thousands. I'm going to draw 1,000 out. When you're 37, it's 40,000. When you're 44, it's when you're 47. When you're 44, it's 80,000. Now see, it started. This ain't chump change now, right? At 51, it is 160,000. At 58, it's 320,000. And when you turn 65, it is 640,000. And when you turn 72, you have 1.24 million. You're welcome. I mean, nobody showed me this, y'all. So y'all forgive me if I use biology here a little bit. Is that something to know? I got showed me that 30. I had $150,000 in a separate fund. Back then, they didn't have the Roth IRA. That's what you want to do now. Pay after tax, and you never pay tax on it. So y'all can have 1.2 million and not pay taxes on it. You pay for it when you get it out. You know, pay it. But I do mine. We do it the first go. I have my money pulled out of my account, my check that I never pay taxes on, and I have 150,000 in there. I took it out last year when the pandemic hit because I thought the market was going to crash, and I really made a mistake. It's the first time I ever pulled it all out. I pulled it all out, and the market rallied 60%. So I would have 250,000 if I had left it in. Oops. Okay. But I really thought it was going to go. I thought we might be in a major meltdown, right? But I couldn't leave the house for a year. I thought, okay, the economy's going to crash. But it's still Walmart, McDonald's got rich off of it, right? I mean, seriously, everybody's buying Walmart, right? All the mom and pop restaurants were closed, right? But McDonald's was national defense, kept it open. You know what I mean? We kept McDonald's open. Okay? I'm just saying, they did well. Anyway, but I still got that plus my state retirement. But I mean, that would have been like $250,000. That's a pretty good little nest egg, right? But it took me 30 years to get that built up to that. Actually, so 25, because I didn't start on about 30. But if you guys start, now here's the part that it make you, and somebody goes, well, I'll be too old to enjoy it. Not necessarily. But look, if you put an extra 100, just another 1,000, 1,200, 100 a month in every year, then you would probably reach this by 58. So I mean, if you could really make that go crazy, if you just, that's what I do. I do $100 a month in that same fund, in the funds. Pretty cool. And I quit investing in individual stocks about 20 years ago because I bought stock in WorldCom. It's a big, they're the like number 3 telephone company out of Jackson, Mississippi, and they were cheating and they all went belly up and their stock went to zero. So that's when I quit buying individual stock. Now my mutual fund, that way in case something crazy goes, one of them still don't get burned. So I had, you know, like I said, anyway. But isn't that kind of cool? But that's our practical application, right? So double time is 70 divided by growth rate. And so we can look at that to look at our population of humans too. So what you want to do is get your money in this exponential growth. Starts out slow the first couple of years, right? But this exponential growth. Pretty cool. I like the little graph of the tables they're showing. Okay. Now, what usually happens though is the population hits a wall and we get this what's called logistic growth curve. So you get a little lag, you reach the growth, and then you reach a carrying capacity of the ecosystem. Look at those numbers stabilizing around 600. So this is what happens in nature. So if you go out here and put fish, like put fish in an aquarium and reach that threshold, once you get above 10, it starts killing them. So the carrying capacity is the maximum number of individuals a population can control and have without destroying the ecosystem. But nature has a way to keep from killing the ecosystem. Isn't that kind of cool? Now, this has happened in several examples. We put deer on an island off the coast of Alaska that did not have deer. And they overbred and destroyed all the trees and all the shrubs. So basically, if you go unchecked and you overshoot a carrying capacity, then it crashes and the carrying capacity gets lowered. So we have proven you can destroy an ecosystem. If I put 30 fish in a take-out aquarium, nothing can live in that aquarium after about a month. You know what I'm saying? Because all the ammonia and stuff, you have to dump the water and the rocks and clean the rocks and start over. So there is a concern about overshooting our carrying capacity. So be able to draw a logistic curve here. We got that one. I just defined that. The carrying capacity is the maximum number of individuals of a given species a community can support. And so that is 1 fish per gallon is the rule in an aquarium. Okay, that's pretty cool. As far as some things that can control and make you reach the carrying capacity. Well, there are density independent factors, and these are things that control the population, but don't have anything to do with how many people live in a given area. And that would be like a natural disaster, right? A flood or a tornado can kill a bunch of organisms, right? And it's not about how close you are packed. Density dependent factors are things like competition. If you have a lot of predators, predation, if you too many people eating you, you're not going to get out there, or parasite disease. And we know that when we have too many people living in or too many organisms living in too small of an area, what happens? Disease becomes rampant and can wipe them out, right? And so these are things that can control a population that are density dependent, and those are pretty cool. And here's a good example of that deer. Actually, I forgot that was on here. Look here. So St. Paul Island off Alaska reindeer were introduced in 1910 by the Park Service. In 1930, they reached exponential growth, and by 1940, there were 2,000 deer, and all of a sudden, they destroyed the ecosystem. They ate all the shrubs, and there were like 3 deer left in 1950. Pretty cool. Now, we didn't understand the rules of ecology then, and what they should have done was what? Had a deer day right in here, right? And let some people go out there and shoot a reindeer, right? And that's what we do in fisheries and wildlife management. We have no day. When I was a kid, there were no deer in Lee County. I was raised in Tupelo. There were no deer. I saw a paper cutting from like 1965, and it had Aunt Sue sees deer in yard, and it was the front page article for the Tupelo Daily Journal. Okay, and by the time I got around, I was in college, deer started showing up over there, and my dad would get mad when somebody would shoot a doe, you know. And we would actually drive over to Holly Springs National Park over in Benton County to deer hunt, or go down to the Delta in Aberdeen and down in the Tenton Waterway deer hunt. Today, deer are everywhere over there. My dad killed trophy deer on our farm. And when I was a kid, there were no deer. So they're actually making a comeback, right? But that's when we have a doe day. We even have a doe day in the Delta. And I will tell you, my wildlife friends, they used to have they would bring all the politicians and anybody wanted to, and take them down there and let them shoot all the doe they want to shoot like 1 day a year. And then they would clean all the meat and take it to like the orphanages in Jackson. Several orphanages and feed the kids. But you have to have a predator. Or you can have you can have this. And I know that's very hard because we were all raised on Disney, right? And come on, man. We all saw Mama get shot, right? And how bad that evil shooter was that shot Bambi's mama, right? But I believe that was doe day. And I think that was a legal kill. Okay. I think they need to digitally redo that. Like I don't know if y'all remember, y'all were not even born, but E.T. You know, when Spielberg made E.T., all the cops had guns and stuff, right? And now with all this cop gun violence, he went back in there and changed it so they're carrying flashlights and stuff. So he's actually digitally taking out the guns out of that. And when E.T. goes off on the bicycle, you know, they all pull their guns in the original movie. Now they're like, hey, get down with a flashlight, you know, trying to clean it up a little bit. And I understand that, but still, we've got to teach children about hunting. Hunting is not a bad thing, okay? And if you don't, then you can have this, okay? So there is a reason God made predators. Okay, and that's important. Okay, and you can see some of there's just more density dependent stuff here. Okay, moving on. Impacts of density dependent factors, just showing how things can affect that. Moving on, predators eating, that's a big deal. Okay, we can talk about that some other time. All right, and now here's another interesting, there's another life pattern we look at. And then I'm just going to the next little part, we're kind of skipping along here, but it talks about predator prey and how they will mimic each other or they will protect each other. And so the strawberry poison air frog, that tells you, that color tells you don't mess with me, right? And some of the frogs, you ever seen a dog eat a frog and spit it out? Because they have sweat glands that make them taste like terrible. Puts a terrible taste in their mouth, so they'll spit it out. So they learn not to eat that. So they have this is talking about ways that we can defend ourselves. And the next one here, there's 2 types of members. These are another little ways of natural increased population. And there are 2 types of these selection, this R selection and K selection, which is kind of interesting. R selection, an unstable, unpredictable environment, population growth is controlled by density independent factors, population size is low. R strategists are opportunistic species, produce a large number of offspring, small body size, mature early, have short lifespan, and don't invest into their children. And some examples of that then of these, look, I think would be an R strategy would be plants, throwing out their seeds, right? No offspring development, no take care of the young, early reproductive age. Bear is a K strategy, large individuals, long lifespan, slow to mature, few and large offspring, much care of offspring, most young survive reproductive age, and they're adapted, they can adapt to a stable environment, adapted to living in a stable environment. Actually looks like a picture I took. I actually was in Yosemite one time and caught a mom and three little bears climbing a tree. Got a cool picture there somewhere. I put that in my office, but it kind of looked like one I've seen that bear. All right. It talks about that white-tailed deer, prolific breeders, right? And female deer breed their first year, and once they start breeding, produce 2 young each year. A century ago, white-tailed deer population was less than 500,000. Today, it's over 200 million in North America. Natural predators of deer, such as wolves and mountain lions, are now absent, but we got Bubba with his rifle, right? We got our deer hunters, right, that are now the predator, right? So we do need to kill some of the deer. Populations that are too large may suffer from starvation and then can bring diseases in. For example, after deer hunting was banned on Long Island, New York, the deer population quickly overgrew all available food resources. So, New York decided to quit deer hunting. And here they are running down the road, right? How many of y'all have friends in deer and stuff, right? Y'all done that? They just come out at night, don't they? And it's bad. Okay, now let's look at the human population. We have had a steady rise to a present population of 7.4 billion people. Prior to 1750, the growth of human population was relatively slow. As more reproductive individuals were added, growth increased and became exponential. The number of people added annually to the world population peaked at around 87 million people on Earth in 1990. So we're at about 87 million new people a year. The doubling time of the human population is estimated to be between 35 to 70 years. That puts it about what I said, right? About a little bit over 1% growth rate. Look at that. In 1800, there were a billion people on Earth. In 1930, 2 billion. In 74, 4 billion. And in 2047, 7.4 billion. Is that 2017? I'm just sorry. I can make that 2017. That's jumping ahead in. But look how the time to double is getting what? Less, right? And here's the graph of it. Look at this. Oh, come on, man, put the graph on here. Okay. I thought it was up to get mad in here. But look, so here is the Earth population, and we're in exponential growth. Okay. All right, now back up. This is a cool one here. So this is something we talk. This is something we talk about in history class, and if you ever take a sociology class and an economics class. There are two types of, we like to put group countries together in these two groups, and it's probably a little more complicated than this, but we like to talk about MDCs or more developed countries like North America, Europe, Japan, Australia, slow population growth, high standard of living, versus LDCs, less developed countries, Latin America, Africa, and Asia, where we have rapid population growth, low standard of living, and where they have strategies to reduce population growth. Family planning programs. I'll give you one that was really tragic. But back in the 60s, I think 1960, they had a really bad famine in China. And being a communist country, they can make some rules, and they made a rule that a couple could only have one child. So they wanted everybody to have one child, like a married couple, and to try to reduce their population over time. And what they would do then is, if you had one child, no problem. If you had two, you lost your house in alignment. You might get moved to a smaller house. And if you had another kid, you had three kids, then you might lose your job. So they really had some harsh punishments on these people. I mean, really brutal. Okay. Now, the theory here, there's a theory here that's been really looked at. It's called the demographic transition model. Okay, and here's what it says. It's really cool. And see if this could apply to America. See if you can think of somewhere this occurs. So we have more developed states and less developed states. Okay, let's call it that for the country. So in the demographic transition model, if you get people jobs, they will have you'll get a decreased death rate followed by this decreased birth rate, and the population growth will stabilize. So if you can get people a better quality of life, right, like a good job, maybe education to get that good job, then you will see them having less children at a younger age, and they will wait to have their children till later. Now, what is the poorest state in America? Be careful here, people. Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, we come in last and everything. Per capita income. I'm actually planning a trip this summer. I'm thinking about going to Maine and Maryland and New Hampshire. I've never been there. I want to see a place where there is no teen pregnancy. There is no unwed birth or whatever. I'm just saying where everybody has a job. Okay, supposedly. Okay, you know, where socioeconomics a lot better up there. So we are number one in all those things that are bad, right? Are pretty much top 3 or 4, but we lead the nation in teen pregnancy. So we are living the demographic transition model, and if we can educate our young people, you know what I mean, and provide better jobs, then we can see ourselves come out, not be, that we can live this demographic transition model that we know how to countries, right? And I think one of the things I can see in my family, my mom and dad, my grandparents had 6 kids. My mom and dad on my dad's side, my dad had 3 and I had 2. And I didn't have any kids. I was over 30, so we were already established at a job. Now I know that doesn't always work out that way, but if y'all wait and have kids till you get older, then you can provide more things for them, right? And if I had 2 more kids, I could have my Grizzly tickets. I'm a Grizzly tickets, right? Dang, that was one last night. They playing really good, okay? And I ain't got to go to games. I usually have, you know, given the students tickets at this point, right? Like, hey, I don't want to go, I can't go now. But anyway, but so you get toys, you get a new car, right? You don't want to have 20 kids, right? A friend of mine had 5 kids, and they were telling me Christmas and stuff, right? I can only spend $100 on each kid because that's $500. You know, I mean, times and stuff if you got a bunch of kids, right? It could be, so incentives like that work. So this is a cool little model that says that what we want to do is develop into a more developed country or state versus the LDC where you have rapid. And why would you have a lot of kids in an agricultural-based environment? Like my dad was 4 and 6 brothers and sisters, because they had to work in the field. My dad picked cotton, you know, but we didn't have tractors. When I came home, we had tractors that made it so much more efficient, right? But think about that, right? You had a bunch of kids because you had to what? You had to run enough food to feed a family, right? And I think COVID has kind of made us remember that our grandparents probably lost a kid, right? Now it's very unusual for one of us to lose a kid, right? It's very traumatic. I have a friend of mine lost a child. That is a terrible thing, right? But death was much more common in the 1600s, right? 1800s in the turn of the last century. So we've been kind of lucky that we've been able to hold these pandemics down until this. Comments. Okay, and I hate to say it, but I mean, look, which family would you like to move in with? This family here in New York City on a tour, on a visit, or the guys that are living in the tent? You know what I'm saying? I mean, so, but the idea is someday we can help these less developed countries transition into the more developed countries, right? World population size of 7 billion. It is predicted that it may level off between 9 and 11 billion by 2050, depending on the speed at which the growth rates decline. The lifestyles of most individuals in the more developed countries is contrasted with that of most individuals in the LDCs. So those of us in the MDCs are destroying more, making more pollution and using more of the resources of Earth, as we'll see. And I think there's a little of that coming up. Age distribution graphs, we've already looked at those, right? Here is what more developed countries look like. You have pretty even, right? Remember, like we talked about, that's like America now. And then the less developed countries, like we looked at in the early part of the last century, was this pyramid shape where we had a lot of babies, a lot of reproductive age, and very few older people. So we're seeing that transition, right? And that's pretty cool, right? And it mentions here, look at this, some of the factors. The shape of these age structures graphs also is to predict that the population of MDCs are approaching stabilization. The population of LDCs will continue to increase for some time. Improve women's rights and increase contraceptive use could change the scenario. Here, community health workers instructing women in India about the use of contraceptives. I don't mean to talk about reproduction, but that's a big deal, right? The development of birth control pills allow women to then control their body, right, and determine with their husband how many children they're going to have, right? Because in those days, you just take up having children, and you're blessed with another kid, number 13 and 14, right? So anyway, so we do have we have the technologies giving us the ability to control that. Okay, other things here. See what we got. Overpopulation due to population growth is more obvious in the LDCs. Overpopulation due to increased resource consumption is more obvious in the MDCs, right? If you run out of things, and pollution. Look at some of these graphs. So look at this. Here are the countries that are making the biggest population: India and China. Way exceed the United States. We have over 300 million. There's over 1.3 billion Chinese and 1.3 billion people in India, but a very small country. Oil consumption, look, we're using what, 4 times the oil that India uses, even though they have a population like 4 times ours, right? So look at that. So who's using the oil? Us. Who's using the coal? China, which is not as clean burning, right? But China's really big in coal, and we're right there with we're second and third with India. And look at CO2 emissions. That's people putting carbon dioxide in there. All that coal burning is throwing a lot of that in. My son-in-law was teaching the ecology class in Ole Miss, and there's a website you can go to, and if you put in all your bills and stuff, and it tells you ways you could lower your carbon footprint. Y'all heard of this? It's like how much carbon dioxide are you responsible for in the air? And so they had a little bit of easy project, for like an easy 100, was you just had to go on the website, put your stuff in, and then just give me 3 things you can do to lower your carbon footprint. And one girl got up, presented, and said, "I ain't worried about my carbon footprint. I am just making jobs for people as I throw trash out the window, driving to school." We give her 0. We didn't play the game, okay? It's like, that's what I do, man. That's my contribution to society. I make trash. It's like 0. But anyway, but we do have to look in the mirror around here that we are one of the major producers of carbon dioxide, right? And which is the gas leading to global warming. Look at that. Per person, oil consumption in the United States is 7 times greater than that in China. In the United States, per person, oil consumption is 4.5 times greater than that in India. In the United States, carbon dioxide emissions are 5 times greater than per person than in Mexico. So we are pretty big. And I just hate being here for goodness. I hate to tell China or India what they should do, and we're like, look at us. I always think about when we leave this class, they look at the great oak forest of the North Pacific. Wait, Robin, there's no oak forest out here. That's right, so we cut it down and made Walmart. I mean, you got to go over to the Hot Spring National Park to get to a convex community of the oak trees, right? So a lot of timber was cut out of the delta that turned into the cotton field, right? At one time. It's pretty interesting stuff here. All right, what I made over? But that's pretty interesting stuff, right? Y'all find out how to do a millionaire, right? Now here's what's crazy, guys. Look, this is fun side note. I don't know why. People offer this. We should put every child. We go money away. We got stimulus checks to folks, right? I would have tied it to the vaccine personally. You didn't get this last check until you got a shot. So we can stop the pandemic, right? That's what I've done. But I think we would have passed legislation, just put every time a baby's born, put $1,000 in a mutual fund for their name and their retirement. Because remember, you had to have 10,000 at what? At 25, right? So take 7 off of that. Get with me here. So 7 after that. I don't do math very well. It's what? 18, you needed what? 5,000, right? Then at 11, you needed 2,500. So at 3, you needed like 1,500. So at birth, like you put $1,200. When my kids grew up, I rounded up all those little Walmart toys you got for the Happy Meals. If we just put the value of that in a mutual fund, they could all win college credit. So think about that. So when I have, God bless his new grandkids, I'm putting $2,000 in a mutual fund that they don't want. Instead of one of those little things we used to collect, the beanie bags, little beanie bag things, or baseball cards or something. Just put some money in a mutual fund. And if the market's still rolling, then they'll be good when they get 65 cents. Y'all have a good day. I enjoyed y'all back. Thank y'all for paying attention. I think I saw a couple people going to go open up their Charles Schwab account today, right? Not a bad idea, man. If you want to gamble, you can pick individual stocks. I'm actually thinking about cryptocurrency. I'm about to buy my first cryptocurrency, I think, today. What do you think about that? I can't understand how it works. I'm just going to throw $500 in there to say I bought some. Fractional. I can't afford a Bitcoin. I can get a 1,000 for the Bitcoin or something. That's pretty interesting stuff. Might explain that to me. How that work?
Wish I could. Have no clue.
I mean, it is weird, isn't it? When you